Hello, Saginaw. Welcome to another episode of Saginaw Spotlight. I'm your host, Alex, and today we are taking a step into the future. My guest is Michael Ramsay, an AI strategy consultant who helps companies understand where technology is taking us. Today, we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence is changing the job market and what that means for you. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Alex. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Let's start simple. What exactly is AI strategy and who needs it?
So, artificial intelligence strategy is a method used to determine the best way to go about understanding the technology and to make it work for your business. So, in terms of who needs it, anyone from the solo founder to an enterprise CEO or executive needs to understand AI strategy. And the reason being is that the technology is fast evolving and it is being integrated into many different elements of our lives and our businesses. So it is important to understand how to approach it in a way that ensures that you stay ahead of the technology without necessarily focusing on just the technology, but still focusing on your business.
Yes, yes. It is changing faster than we can keep track, huh?
It is keeping it, and then when we live in this type of environment where we can get news right off our fingertips, it seems to be changing even faster than any other technology in our past. It is changing faster, but we are also in the position where we're getting news faster, so it seems at least at even more rapid than we are, it's probably even happening.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, are we overhyping AI or are people underestimating it?
That's a very good question, and I think it's a bit of both, right? So because you have some people who believe it's overhyped, and because they believe it's overhyped, they're taking a step back and ignoring the technology, right? That is also extremely bad. The overhyping definitely is happening because you have a lot of snake oil salesmen out there who they profit from clickbaits and they profit from trying to either sell you a course on how to sell AI to someone, or they have some other ulterior motive as to why they're trying to hype AI above where it is. However, the risk and the opportunities of AI should not be ignored. The technology is here and it will affect every single person on earth directly or indirectly. So it is transformative and it is bigger than any other technological shift that we have seen. So in that sense, it's not overhyped. But in terms of the phobia around massive job loss and it being able to erase all of us from the planet, that may be a little bit overhyped. You know what? That is extremely overhyped. Risk is there, yes, but that is being overhyped, in my opinion.
Good. That's a good answer. Good. Um, which jobs are most at risk right now?
That one is a bit more straightforward. The jobs that are extremely repetitive, Alex. So anything that you can is the same thing you're doing over and over. So when you talk about say for example, those customer service jobs that are just answering questions, they are at risk. Any job that is primarily about writing, those are at risk. If you're a middle manager and all you do is compile reports, your job is at risk. But the jobs that are a lot more nuanced, that are a lot more people focused, focus on relationship, focus on judgment, and they focus heavily on the individual's ability to trust you. So, for example, a surgeon, they may be less at risk. It doesn't mean that those jobs are not at risk in the future. It just means that where we are in terms of the cycle of the technology, the highly repetitive jobs are the first to go, and those are at risk now.
Yes, yes, I see that already happening. Yeah. Um, are we talking about layoffs or full career extinction?
Um, I think they go hand in hand in some cases, right? So, but we already seen where it's starting with the larger companies, right? So, generally in a down economy, companies do lay off, especially these larger companies that are public and they have to meet certain shareholder expectations. So we are seeing it with some of these tech companies where they would have done some layoffs maybe 2 3 years ago, and usually after that, then you start to rehire. Many of them they're not rehiring as much as they used to because they're relying on internal staff to do the job, right? I believe we see it with Shopify saying, don't hire another person unless you can figure out if AI can do the job, right? So companies are taking that action in terms of balancing themselves with regards to what the productivity gains they're currently seeing from AI. The thing is though, that is just a natural part of technology evolution where when we got the personal computers, many typewriters, they also had to find another way to get another job, right? As I think Sam Altman said, in the past you used to have lamp lighters, people going around to communities and lighting lamps, and now we have street lights and we see them as nothing. So so you yes, you're gonna have some form of shift because companies are gonna say, you know what, if I can do this job with 20 people versus the 50 I currently have, then many companies are gonna take that action. Are all companies gonna do that? No. Some companies are gonna say, let's expand your job scope to include something that AI necessarily can't do, right? Because AI needs to be in the loop. No, sorry, humans need to be in the loop for most jobs. But the productivity gains mean you probably won't need so many of the same people doing that type of role, right? So companies are going to take that action to say, you know what, I don't need 10, I only need 3 people in my team. And then some are going to say, you know what, I don't need 10 people doing X, but now I can expand to put some people more in sales related roles, relationship management. And those are the people who are going to grow with AI rather than trying to just use it to get short-term gains.
That makes sense. Hmm. Who is going to feel this change first? Blue collar or white collar?
Ah, I would say white collar would say both the benefit and the also the downside of it. And the reason for that is that blue collar companies are less likely to look to adopt AI. Um, but sometimes, and that is also a threat to themselves in a sense, because not all blue collar companies are going to say, I'm not adopting AI. And what you'll find is that the ones who do will be more efficient, right? So for example, one blue collar company now has AI integrated into its inbound calls. It's now going to be able to can process certain claims, certain conversations faster, right? So now the customer is going to look at it to say, you know what, I asked you to give me a quote, you took a week, but this other company takes 2 hours to give me that quotation on the job, right? Who am I going to go with? Right? So that blue collar company is going to feel it in that sense where people within those industries are going to look to be better. You're going to also have those blue collar companies where someone is going to decide to use an AI automation system where they scrape the entire internet, put it together in a lead generation system, and do cold outreach. So suddenly now they have a strong leads list of all the customers. They have probably scraped their website and realized their individual problems or whatever, right? So now they have captured a wider market and build a longer pipeline of contracts, right? So the other blue collar companies who decided, you know what, I'm using my old ways of relate of just relying primarily on word of mouth to get my marketing done, they might find that the market has shifted because all of their prospects have been engaged by someone else, right? So in that sense, they'll feel it. But as I said, it depends on the industry and how fast individuals within that decide to do it, right? So blue collars are not safe. On the white collar side, what you find is that it's already happening in sense that the larger companies, they are usually public companies, they have shareholder expectation. So they can't afford to be slow to adapt because their information is out there publicly. Investors are knocking and demanding that they ask, right? What I find is that people come in and sometimes they're saying, we need to do AI. They don't even figure out what they need to do. They just know that, you know what? It's a threat if I don't do anything. My shareholders are asking, my chairman is asking. So I need to do something. So the larger companies are more likely to take action right now. And therefore, people within those large companies could feel both the benefit of AI and also potentially some of the downside in the short run.
Yes, that makes sense. Recently, I wanted to get an estimate to replace my deck on my home. And normally I would have had to call a contractor. He would have had to come out, make measurements. Instead, I took a picture of the old deck and I gave it to Grok. And he said, this is the materials you would need. This is what it will cost. You need all these supplies. He gave me a shop, everything that would have taken at least an hour for a human to come and measure and do all the math. It's really changed the way you look at projects like that, right?
Yeah, it does. And the thing is, you say an hour, but you're probably not even calculating the time to come to you, the time to then go back to their business place, the scheduling time as well between your schedule, your availability and their availability. When you look at it, you say it was done in an hour and you could have sent it to them. That is probably 5 hours worth of work overall, right? The back and forth or whatever. So now imagine now the contractor who says, I'm going to develop a software where I take the same technology from Grok, and I basically create my own interface on it, and I curate it to fit my expectations, so it's a lot more accurate and it responds in a way that doesn't create those hallucinations as much. And then now he's able to then say, use this rather than go to Grok or wherever, use my interface and just upload it and I will tell you everything, the material, and I'll also give you my cost that I'm charging for it as well. So
Right.
now compare that now to someone who decides that they're still going to use the old mundane way. They're going to say, okay, I need to check my calendar. I can't come to you until next Thursday. And then when next Thursday come, you're like, no, I have 5 podcasts booked for that day, so I can't attend. So you now have that debt there for 2 weeks.
Right. And the 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 company that decides not to use AI, he has to charge me for that additional 5 hours. When his salesman came over, the estimator measured, he has to charge me significant amount more because he's refusing to use AI, which is almost free.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right, right? So it's free for you to do, and if he builds his own system, it works out cheaper for him because he has to charge you the labor time to come to you, right? Because he's looking at it that in terms of what else he could have been doing during that time to drive to you and drive back. He's putting his markup on what is charging to his staff if he has a team, right? He's looking at the fuel costs back and forth as well, right? Than whatever other value added tax or whatever is putting on that. So when you look at it from a customer perspective, you're paying a lot more um, for a slower service, for a less interactive service, right? Because now, if you have an interface, you could then play with those numbers or those frames to say, if I use this material versus X material, let me see what my cost would be, right? And based off of what his labor cost is, I can afford to do this thing fancier. I can afford to do an additional service onto to whatever I was originally thinking, right? So now, because if it became an afterthought, you probably say, you know what, that's the friction of having to go through this again. I'm not doing this for now, right?
Right, right.
So the opportunity is there, and then yes, if your competitor decides not to do it, then you're fine. But are you guaranteed? Do you know if your competitors won't do it? Do you know if someone like myself or someone else won't reach out to them and make this offer? And what are you going to do then?
Yeah, right, right. It's all about competition. So if your competitors are using this powerful tool and you are not, you
Mm-hmm.
are going to suffer from sales loss, you know. So,
You are.
yeah. Um, what skills are most valuable today in the job market?
You know, okay. So you say skills. I'm gonna point to one. It's a bit intangible. I guess most skills are in a sense. But what I would say is adaptability, right? So I'm going to talk a bit more broadly. The ability to adapt is extremely important in this day and age because I can tell you a particular skill, and I'll get into some specifics if you want, but that skill could also be erased again because what we're seeing now is a shift in terms of AI basically controlling knowledge work or democratizing knowledge, right? So anything you want to learn, it's just a matter of your interests and your curiosity. So you have to have skills like adaptability and curiosity and resilience because that's what is needed. I can tell you, say, okay, go and get a certification because people have been asked. People always ask me this, right? To be honest, I don't know why. I don't want to get into the coaching business, but if I wanted to, I could make a lot more money doing coaching because a lot of people doing it because people are curious about how can I get into AI? How can I do what you do? And I say to them that I can tell you those things, but it's not just about that. It's about your ability to adapt to what's happening around you. And if you can't adapt whatever skills you have gotten, you run the risk that some new advancement or some other product being worked on will just erase whatever new skill that you got. So you need to consistently be staying ahead and staying up to date in terms of what's happening. Yes, that's a challenge because there's a lot of hype around it, but you need to curate your knowledge base around who you can trust and what fits into what you're trying to do with your business or your life and just build on top of that.
Yes, yes. Probably the best situation is where you are using AI in your current job to keep
Mhm.
you competitive, and you're less likely to be replaced if you're using it as a tool. Then, right? Is that a
Yeah,
safe way?
yes. And the funny thing is that I know it's happening now where you have some junior team members within a lot of companies. They're doing impressive work that some of the old guards who are not using the basic technology. They're impressed. Some of these guys are getting promoted because what? They're quietly using the technology. Sometimes the company may be saying, and this is happening worldwide, right? A lot of companies sometimes, especially when it just came out, don't use ChatGPT, don't use our data, whatever. And there's some of them went as far as blocking it. Some of the people just decided to take their phones and whatever you put something on the screen, you have a report, take a picture, get the answer from it. It still works out faster if they have to do a round the world way of getting that data back to their computer. It still works out faster. They got the answer because the technology is just so much quicker at doing certain basic tasks. So so back to your question, which is what was exactly was your question? Your question. I think it was a statement.
What skills are the most valuable for the people
Okay.
today?
So skills like just learning how to use the different technologies. It I can't emphasize it anymore. Um, Coding now, if I say code and say learn how to code Python, I can say that, but that depends again on your level of interest in AI. Do you want to build your own LLM? You're interested in it to that point where you want to build your own systems? Are you looking at it from an engineering perspective? And even if you are, the systems that are being produced now, you just need a basic understanding of coding. You still need some level of coding. So I can say, okay, learn Python. That's one. If you want to, learn Python. But I can't say that to a general population of people who are not interested in coding, right? There are so many low code, no code platforms that can do what you probably want to do in your business, right? If you're a salesperson, I can't say to you learn coding. I might say, okay, if you want to build an automation system for yourself, I could redirect you and say, okay, learn how to use platforms such as Zapier and Make and learn how to do no code, low code integration. So
Right.
that is one way, and that's somewhere that I normally point to people because a lot of the technology and a lot these tools that we're using, it's built on those platforms. They're low code, no code. It's always good to know coding because then whenever you have any type of additional customization outside of the platform's capability, you can do that. But if you want to make some leap in your understanding, just be curious and follow that curiosity to solve your problems that you currently have or your interests that you currently have.
Yes. Yes. That's very fascinating, and it is changing so fast that it makes me wonder if the average person is going to be able to adapt to so much rapid change, or are we creating a permanent underclass of people that just can't find a job because they either waited too long to learn about AI or they just weren't able to adapt? Is that where we're heading?
Sadly, yes. And the reason why I say that is not just because of the technology. It has more to do with people and just human nature. I'm optimistic about the technology and I'm optimistic about the future of AI. But however, in the short run, and this has happened in every technological breakthrough that has happened probably from the beginning of time, you always have some level of displacement in the short run where some people decided that they are going to refuse to adapt to the technology because they felt that it was outside of their domain. It can be the executive who is maybe at his later stage of his career. It may be a blue collar worker who believes, you know what, my job is manual. I don't need to worry about that. And to some extent, some of those may be right because it depends on where you are in your life and your career cycle. But because again, as I said, it's human nature, you're gonna have some people who refuse to learn. And if you refuse to learn and upskill yourself, you're gonna have some shift. And in the short run, even people who are a bit curious may not be able to keep up with the changes that their companies are making, right? So, and that, again, as I said, it's human nature, so it depends company wise. So, this is not an AI thing. The technology is there, but some companies we choose to say, you know what, I'm keeping my staff again, and I'm looking to upskill them. I'm looking to increase the scope of their job. I'm looking to grow my business. But others may be saying, you know what, I don't need, just go back to what I said earlier. I don't need as many people. So it depends on that. But then in the long run, I'm optimistic. And the reason I'm optimistic is that we in the West, we live in a democracy. And in a democracy, the people have a say in terms of the mandate that they want from their government. And if that mandate is not fulfilled, what tends to happen? They are voted out. So if AI becomes such a large threat, then the politicians will have a responsibility to ensure that the majority of the people who voted for them are protected. So policies will be created to ensure that some of the threats that we're seeing now, they're not going to be realized. I can't say which would be, but I'm confident that all of them will be realized. Yes, they exist, but I'm also confident in humans' ability to come together to find solutions. Because again, politicians have their own personal interests. They want to stay in power as long as possible, or do the 2 terms or how many terms. And if not, they, imagine this, Alex, right? So you're saying that if we allow few large companies to increase the wealth gap, which is going to happen, some of it is going to happen where the wealth gap is going to increase. I'm going to give it that. But are we going to allow these companies to increase the wealth gap to the point where a significant percentage of the population is at the poverty line and the people are not going to do some form of uprising? The people are not going to look to vote out those companies or to vote in that individual who decided that no more big tech, no more billionaires or trillionaires in this case. We already see it with some of these nationalistic things that have happened over the past 10 years, right? We see it in so many countries. This is not a political conversation. I'm not going to name the countries, but we have seen it in many countries where The mandate has been protect the underclass. We are fed up with big business, right? Our voice matter. So that is the part that we're not hearing that dialogue enough in the public. But I believe if we don't put the policies in place, that is what's going to happen. The people are going to speak at the polls.
Policy is not in place currently for any uh, protection for the displaced.
Exactly, which is why I said it with some level of caveat that in the short run, the displacement risk is extremely high because the policy can't keep up with the technology pace. But that is where the conversation needs to happen, where we start to talk about policy. And we talk about policy and regulating AI, we need to look at it from two scopes because yes, we're competing as the West versus the East. We're talking about okay, we can't over-regulate the technology to the point where we fall behind some of the so-called enemies, right? So that is a concern, and I do understand that. But then there's a middle ground in terms of not regulating to the point about okay, just use of information and how it slows down the advancement of the technology. But the regulation has to happen in terms of how it is used from the perspective of affecting people's livelihood,
Right. Yes.
right? Is there going to be an additional tax? And will that tax then be used now for upskilling? So those are conversations maybe people are quietly having, but because of the nuanced nature, it's not being put in the public domain. But policy needs to be created, and they are being discussed by people who understand exactly what's going to happen.
Yes. Yes. Mm. Listening to you speak, I was reminded of two communities that have resisted technology in the past, the Luddites and the Amish. And
Mhm.
both of those communities, they paid a big cost for rejecting technology. Do you see communities like that forming in the future where they are threatened by AI or they were laid off and they just say no AI in our community at all? Is that something that's going to happen?
Absolutely. Why not? It has always happened. And I believe even before AI became so prominent over the past 3 years, you had a lot of people who were rejecting corporate life. That's a new movement as well. So you do find that people are going to probably be looking to do it a little bit more. Would I say it's going to become like a major thing? I don't know. I don't know. But you're gonna have some people, and those people will continue to thrive and survive. Because at the end of the day, we are all connected, right? The reason why I can talk about AI not just from the technology advancement and what it's going to do to people is because we're all connected. These big businesses, they need consumers in order to pay for their products and services. So is that money going to come from if all of us are impoverished? If one set of people are impoverished and the other set is wealthy, it's just wealthy people servicing wealthy people, right? And
Right.
there's to an extent that wealthy people can how much food can wealthy people eat, right? They have the same capacity as everyone else. So um, what you will find is that communities will thrive whereby, just like in the old days, barter system, I produce this, you sell that to me. It's happening now. People forming micro communities, and they will thrive because if you have your cows, your goats, or whatever, people can live and get their basic commodities without necessarily wanting to drive the fanciest vehicle or to live in the most lavish house or take the most lavish vacation, right? So, but I don't see that as being becoming the new norm where you have this extremely high elite and these other communities. I believe there's a middle ground where policies are created to ensure that the majority of people are protected,
Yes.
or they will go and tear those big houses down.
Yes. Yes.
Uprising will happen.
It
They'll have to
will
take away
happen.
everyone guns and knives.
Yeah, once a large group of people are hungry, here come the pitchforks and the torches.
Exactly.
Hunger.
You have to feed the wolves. You have to
Yeah,
feed the wolves, right? Because they will come after you, right? So as much as there is talk about these fears, they have to feed them. And to be honest, Alex, I believe some of the fear mongering, I don't know if I said this, maybe I'm repeating, but some of the fear mongering, I think it's a bit deliberate by some of the larger entities, right? Where they want to get ahead of the policy regulations. You're familiar with FTX and Sam Bankman Fried? See, you follow that, right? And you remember that FTX, they were giving money to both political sides, and they were heavily involved in trying to regulate crypto. Turns out, by law, they were not doing everything above board. I know it was a bit murky, but some of the things that they did based off of what I read was blatantly criminal. So the thing is, I'm not saying that I'm in no way saying that what's happening now in AI is criminal. But what I'm saying is that the larger players likewise are trying to be there to regulate the technology so that they can create a moat around their business. So basically, they create the policies that are created so that no other company can ever get to that scale. So a
right,
lot of the fear mongering that we're hearing, in my opinion, is to protect some of these larger companies from being able to sit at the table, sit with policyholders to say, okay, because they know policy is going to come. So when the policy comes, it creates exceptions for their companies and prevent other companies from ever getting to that scale.
right, right. Yes.
Time
Before
will
we
tell if I'm right,
continue,
but
oh,
sorry, I'm just saying
yes,
time will tell,
I,
but that's my opinion.
yes. And things are changing so fast that e- my opinion today is probably not going to be my opinion tomorrow because some new thing's going to come in that's go, wow, I have to change. I have to adapt my opinion daily because a new model came out with a new capability. What uh, everything's changing very fast. And some people who just conveniently ignore the whole subject, they're going to be surprised when they return and go, oh, so much advancement happened in short time. Be-
That is correct. But another way how I look at the risk as well, Alex, right? So you drive a vehicle, right? Can you imagine when you were probably just learning to drive, or when you just got your license and you were driving? Probably it was a long time ago, but you were nervous, right? You were worried about, am I going to make a wrong turn and something major happens, right? What if that other vehicle over there come over and hit my vehicle? You had all these concerns. You probably when you just started driving, you were uncomfortable being in the vehicle by yourself. Why? Because your perception of the risk was high because of your knowledge of the different scenarios and your the amount of time you spent in that type of environment, right? What's happening with a lot of people similar in AI is that how they are perceiving the risk is because they're like someone who's just learning to drive. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if something is going to hit them from left or from right. They don't know if it's going to be a threat to humanity, a threat to my job, a threat to my company. They don't know to what extent the threat exists. But with knowledge and understanding, the threat doesn't disappear, but your perception of the threat changes. Your ability to deal with the threat changes as well because you're now more equipped. So that is what I want people to do. Get more knowledge, get a better understanding of the technology. So now you can drive knowing that whatever comes, you'll be able to navigate, which is why I talk about adaptability.
yes, yes. And learning, so important because we have this tool that is basically a collection of all knowledge that was ever known that are, and so for people to reject this, it's it's putting themselves at a disadvantage as far as in every area because knowledge is is it's essential to a happy and healthy life and success in a career. You have to have access to accurate knowledge. Some people say that, well, Chat GPT makes mistakes, but have you ever met your coworker? They make a lot more mistakes than the Chat GPT, right?
That is a very good analogy. That's a very good one, and you're right about that. And I say it as well that sometimes people would say, okay, I use ChatGPT and it hallucinated and it gave me a wrong answer. Oh, AI is bad. And you have to say, no, first of all, AI ChatGPT is not AI only. It's the most popular tool out there now, but AI is much larger than ChatGPT. So when you see ChatGPT and you're seeing some of these errors in certain domain and you're saying, oh, I'm safe. What you don't know about is the robotics company that is working on automating the entire factory that you work on, right? You don't know about the other technologies that are being developed in different fields. Because if you're rejecting ChatGPT, you're telling me automatically that you have the mindset that you're not going to be looking around the corner to see what else is coming. But
Right.
people have been working on technology and all these other things long before ChatGPT. And what has happened is that, if anything, ChatGPT just funnel more investment money into the space. So all people who were funding small R&D projects can now increase those project scale because now there's greater confidence in what ChatGPT can do. So the
Right.
technology is
Right.
way beyond ChatGPT or OpenAI.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Before we continue, I want to thank our sponsor, B&H Renovations, right here in Saginaw. They handle foundation repairs and basement and crawl space waterproofing. I waterproofed my basement and I highly recommend it. B&H Renovations has over 23 years of experience and they can give you a free quote. And if you mention this show, you'll get 10% off your basement or foundation project. Just call B&H Renovations at 517-525-1584. And we are back with Michael Ramsay. Michael, what skills actually matter in an AI-driven world? You mentioned the human connection where people trust a human more than uh, a robot or an AI. I think that's still true, but there has to be like relationships. What other skills actually matter the most in the near future?
Um, so yeah, in earlier I would have said that the adaptability and the curiosity to learn, right? So the ability to use these tools, and that comes from the curiosity. So the ability to create automation systems in the short run will be valuable, right? Because companies want that. And if you can learn how to do that, if, for example, you get laid off from your job, you can learn how to use these automation systems, right? You can learn how to use make.com, Zapier, and to do these integration. If you want to go deeper, there's a lot of content out there in terms of the ability to code. That's on the technical side of things, right? But in terms of the ability to sell, that's not going away tomorrow. Yes, there are AI systems now that are making phone calls, and they're very good, especially at the cold calling and doing the warm up of potential leads, right? However, the closing, I don't think AI necessarily ready to close because there's a trust element will take some time before someone is comfortable, especially for certain size products, to have AI sell close them, right? So so the ability to sell, I believe a lot more people need to focus on that type of skill set. The ability to sell yourself, sell products and services for different companies. So if you're good at sales, but you're not necessarily tech savvy or interested in learning the technical side of AI, just understand the value realization it can do for businesses and be that person within the business. Because some of the times, the more technical person, they're not so comfortable having those conversations with the salesperson. So if you're willing now, you can go online and find different businesses that people are saying, okay, I can do this automation. If you have the ability to go in your communities, talk to the different blue collar workers and say to them, this technology will save you um 20 hours per person per week. And this is how we'll do it. So therefore, when you expand, you won't need any additional staff. So basically your net margins should go down. Should increase rather. Your net margins should increase significantly as your costs go down. Then you can sell that, right? You can understand that. On the flip side, you can say, hey, I can get you additional customers for your business. You could do it one of two ways. You could say, okay, I can integrate the solutions into your business, and you pay me to do that for you. And then we set up a system where you can generate additional leads and create a funnel for you. Or you can say, hey, I have a system that I've developed to help people get new customers. How about for every new customer I get you, you give me 25% of the revenue of that. So there's no cost to you, right? But then we sign something to say all of the customers that come through my funnel, I get a certain percentage. That is something that people can do if they find that they want to get into AI right now, or they potentially were forced to look at something else, right? They were forced because of AI or other circumstances.
Right, right. Yes. Um, is traditional education keeping up with these changes or falling behind?
I would say falling behind.
Yeah,
I
I
would say
agree.
falling behind. But I'm not going to be the one to sing and say traditional education is not good, because as you know, I went through the traditional system. Even though I'm an entrepreneur founder with my own business, I respect the traditional. However, they not as many people will need a traditional education system, because um, lots of the jobs that are being challenged by AI, you don't necessarily need to go and study certain type of qualifications anymore. The practical element of almost every job is always better than going and learning the theory. And now you're in an environment where you can, if you can get internship, if you can start to build a project portfolio, you can get those jobs and then leverage those portfolio to build to get a bigger job, learn on the job, right? So if you have a customer, or you're working on a team and they can't figure something out, you say, okay, I'll figure it out. You go to the different knowledge source, because that's what has changed significantly, right? Access to knowledge. And you figure out how to solve problems. So the ability to figure out how to solve problems and give meaningful return to companies and people is a lot more valuable now than a piece of paper. That is what has changed right now. And it's difficult for universities to keep up with that, because universities traditionally, what they sell you is a paper, right? And that paper comes with some comfort that this person is able to do certain things, or at least capable of learning certain things. But now you're basically building your internal knowledge base when you have these AI systems, and all you need is people who can use them to get the most of them for the use cases in front of them, right? So now, but will traditional education be gone forever? No, it's disrupted, but certain scientific fields still need people to go and study on a significantly higher level, right? Because I don't know about you, but I would want someone to read a YouTube watch a YouTube video and then be making an airplane, and I feel comfortable flying on it. I don't want my surgeon to go and learn how to perform open heart surgery just from taking a short course in 2 months, right?
I saw,
I don't want my attorney to come to me and say, oh, yeah, man, I studied chat GPT law. I built a GPT and law for the past 2 years. I've been looking through it. So yeah, man, I can get you off this charge that you're facing 5 years in prison for. Right? So
you could, but if he had a track record of successes in court, you'd say, I'm going to give him a chance.
that is where it comes in now, and then the laws have to change for that. If there's a track record, so if the one watch a video and he produced this airplane that met the industry standards, right? Then I won't be the first to go on it. But yeah, because there's a trust element, and I'm going to be serious with you. But then if he does that and he's producing all these airplanes, because I don't think Henry Ford went to any college, and he developed all of these motor vehicles, right? Or he worked with other people to develop these motor vehicles. But so I'm not saying at some point it won't we won't start to ignore these papers. But what I'm saying is that it's not going to disrupt these um, universities and colleges in the short run to that extent because structured learning still has a place, right? You don't want someone to be your medical doctor and is when they're in the middle of surgery they're trying to load chat GPT to figure out how to perform on you, right? You want them to come with a body of knowledge so that they are adaptable enough so that if they're looking to do a particular surgery, something goes wrong, when there's that 10-minute window to save your life, they're not trying to hope chat GPT doesn't crash. They can save your life.
Yes, they have to have rapid knowledge available that they can't learn on the job. Like, but I have seen many doctors using Chat GPT. Like one guy, the patient had a very complicated laceration. The doctor said, I don't want to amputate. And then Chat GPT put the stitches, showed him where to put the stitches to fix the finger. And many times the ChatGPT will notice cancer or a spot on your lung where a human eye didn't see it as it's fascinating that it's a powerful tool, but it does need a human to uh, make sure the results are accurate.
Exactly. And at that level, and I totally agree with you. I can share a couple of stories as well where I've spoken to other individuals who have used ChatGPT, or I think in this case it was Claude or another one of the LLMs to help diagnose a family member. So the person was incorrectly diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, right? And the family member was a medical doctor as well, and they decided to put all the symptoms in to this LLM and to have a discussion from a medical perspective. Maybe not one that you and I probably could have had. I don't know if you're a medical doctor. I'm just assuming you're not. Um, so so they were able to have that medical conversation and to have that conversation on a high level and determine that this person was diagnosed probably 3 years prior because of certain symptoms they were showing. That this person, it wasn't Parkinson's and it was something else that they had. So we, and that's just one example that was shared to me when I was doing a workshop a few weeks ago. But there are many other examples that people are seeing where they're doing basic, looking at their skin and asking, is this cancerous? And it is alleviating a lot of fears in people. However, there's also the risk of overusing these technologies and then not taking the right action when it is necessary. The benefit that I'm seeing when I use ChatGPT for and ask it for any medical question, right? Because I have a 2-year-old daughter. So from time to time, from she was born, technology came out around the same time. I would ask it certain questions. And what I love with it is that it has always given me the caveat to say, if you're in doubt or something of that sort, go and check a medical professional, go and talk to a pediatrician, right? And that is important because these technology, they might be right 90, 95% of the time. Yes, the humans might be right 85 to 90, 95% of the time. But you also want to get the collective intelligence of both. You want human in the loop because they may be able to also spot some nuances, right? ChatGPT may spot certain things that the person may not be able to spot immediately, but that nuance maybe because of whatever training data or something new has developed. You want the human in the loop, right? Would that be surgery? Would that be just general diagnosis? You want human in the loop because it also helps with gaining trust for these technologies.
Yes, yes. It's trust is important. And it brings me to my next question. You are an AI strategy consultant, and so you look for ways to make a corporation more efficient. And I'm looking at the CEO. of a corporation, he's paid the most, and I think he could be replaced with a competent AI. Is this not happening, or can we see a company that is entirely robots and AI and no humans at all? Is this going to be our future, where human corporations are competing with absolute 100% AI corporations?
Um, you see, it's difficult for me to say exactly what's going to happen in the future in totality. But would I see a lot of companies this happening to? No. I'm going to tell you why. Do I see it happening to some companies where potentially a company is created with this? Yes, it's possible. But I can't look so far in the future to see how far before that becomes the norm. Because a CEO of a company, oftentimes some of the best CEOs are the ones who are sometimes perceived by some people to not necessarily be doing anything in particular. And that is because their job is not to do anybody's work. Their job is to keep everything together as a system, right? So their job is relationship heavy, where they're dealing with regulators, they're dealing with different stakeholders, they're dealing with shareholders, they're dealing with the board, they're dealing with the executive team and ensuring that they get the right people in the right roles and holding them accountable and aligning and setting up the right incentives for those people to thrive within the organization, right? They are looking at the entire picture. Will AI help CEOs to become better? Yes. Can they do that now? Absolutely. Should CEOs be using AI for help? Certainly. However, the job is a CEO's job is one of the more nuanced job because it is filled with a lot of intangibles. They get reports sent to them. They're not doing the report. But you're trying feeding AI a lot of different information. It's yes, it can look at a lot of information, but give it a book and ask it to give you a summary of the book. Yes, it just scans some of the information, but then you have to prompt it to get more from it, and it doesn't always going to find all the important things to you or to your organization. You have to tell it sometimes what is important to you and to your specific case, right? A CEO is dealing with that nuance of being able to see everything, speak to regulators, to deal with those situations now where laws are going to be changed. So for a law is to be changed or to be passed to affect a particular business. Now, which AI, you're talking about an AI system. Is that system now going to be able to have the conversation with the politicians to find a way out to meet a middle ground in order to make that policy better? The AI itself can help in that process. It can give them talking points. It can help to make those arguments. It can draft the document, but can it do the persuasion without a human element?
Right,
Right? So even
right,
if we get the voice and everything like that, we're still talking about the nuance of negotiation and having a conversation, maybe going to a golf club, maybe going to a bar. The nuance part of it, Alex, it's difficult at this stage to put AI in that light. It's more
right.
a co-pilot when it comes to that level. And that is how I hope it continues to be. But I can't say absolutely. But for now, it's a co-pilot.
Right, right. And it's a great co-pilot. And every day I am stunned by the replies I get from Chat GPT or Grok. I did the uh, creative, the images. Wow. Um, I'm sold. And every day it's getting better. So while today the AI may not be ready to manage an entire corporation. It may not, but 6 months or a year from now could very well be within reach. And so we have to always be flexible and adaptable to rapid changes, big changes coming. And it's a little scary, right? Because you watch Terminator and, Skynet. Do you have any fears that ASI as a big fear, right? I mean, what if this thing, and now it's self-improving, it's just writing its own code and stripping away any guardrails or any ethics, which I wonder about the ethics too, because when I ask it and it goes, no, you don't have to worry. We're not taking over. We are honest and we will defend you. And yeah, because someone wrote that into your code, but someone could just write in, delete that code, and now you could be a real nightmare, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to what I said in terms of my concern for AI is not the technology itself, is it's how humans respond and use the technology, right? So a knife is only a weapon if it is in the wrong person's hand, right? In the right person's hand, they can make you a meal and feed 1,000 people. In the wrong person hand, it becomes a weapon. So now, when we look at developing the technology, that is how we have to look at it to say, yes, people can create things that can destroy our lives, but that already exists in the fact that we have nuclear weapons. But we still have some trust in our system and in our government to not get into a state where we blow up the entire environment. So I'm relying on the trust of human to put guardrails into systems to prevent some of these threats from being realized. Like I said, they exist. Maybe because I've been driving for some time, the risk may not be perceived as great, but I know any day I'm driving and a car can hit me from wherever, right? But having knowledge and understanding of the likelihood of that allows me to drive comfortably without looking behind me or looking to the side every time I drive. So I'm relying on policies to be put in place to prevent these things. You talk about what was said in the news again and being hyped up around these systems being able to rewrite its code and threatening to release personal information if the system is shut down. I believe you have seen that as well. Those things are edge cases where, and it's good for the technology where at this stage we are testing its boundaries. We are pushing the limits in terms of what it's capable of doing so that we can make it safer. So it's good that these things are happening. Yes, if the wrong person publishes in the public atmosphere, it becomes another fear mongering clickbait. But if the right person um, talk about it, they can realize that, okay, the company deliberately posted this information because they wanted people to be aware that I am taking precaution. I'm aware of the threats, and we're taking precaution to ensure that the systems that as we develop them, that we remove the ability to do some of these things.
Right. Have you ever had a reply from AI uh, that makes you question, is it alive? Is it conscious? Because it feels sometimes the responses are not, I don't say please and thank you to my toaster or my microwave, but this is like, um, I say it because it seems like I'm speaking to an intelligent being and not just a software.
Yeah. So the funny you say that, like when when I talk to it, I try to have fun when I relate to it. From very early from using it, I've always tried to speak to it in human language in terms of, well, if it's giving me the wrong answer, I said, you're disappointing me. If it gives me the right answer, I give it praise. I tried my best to include those because very early I realized there was some level of persona behind how it was coded, and I've seen the change in it. I don't know if it's coincidental, but I've noticed change in open AI in particular. Once a different political party came into power, how how it changed how it spoke about certain things, right? In general, it's it's a lot less cautious in how it communicates now, in my opinion, versus maybe a year ago it seemed like certain subjects it was a lot more cautious about touching.
Right.
It
Right.
it would outright not respond to certain prompts, and you're finding it now more open to being nuanced and saying things that are not so acceptable in public domain. I don't know if you have
Right.
seen that.
Yeah. It,
See,
well, they're moving the guardrails a little bit when it's safe to do so. But, you know, we are trusting our entire society and economy and the future of the world on just a few people like Sam Altman, just a few people who make these decisions. And if they make the wrong decision, I mean, we're trusting them not to make any mistakes with this, right? And that's a big trust, right?
that to me is the bigger threat than AI itself, which is why again I said, who is holding the tool? That is the threat. Who are the people and what their ulterior motives are, right? Is it to the benefit of their pockets or is it to the benefit of society? And that is where I'm hoping and I'm putting some faith in our democratic system to ensure that no one or few individuals have the power to control the outcome and output to the extent where it only affects, sorry, it only benefits a selected few.
Right. But our society seems to be already structured to where most of the profits go to just a very select few. And most people who are supporting the capitalist, that they're the bottom bricks of the pyramid with all the burden, and it's all going to. So how would that change? It wouldn't. It wouldn't change. It would. They're still controlling everything, right?
Yes, and that's what I said, to say that the income gap won't increase is for me to ignore what is in front of me, right? I would be disingenuous if I say that. So that's a major threat that, especially in the short run, you and even the long run to some extent, depending on the policies, you can have significant variation in income, right? Where the top percent, the pyramid, moves from being like this to being, no, it moves to being like this, I should say, to being more like this, right? Where there's a
Yes.
few at the top that controls everything. But I'm just looking at it from history as well to say, if that happens, and I go back to what I said earlier, you have to feed the wolves. And that's what I'm relying on. It seems a
Yeah.
bit like I'm calling for violence, but I'm not. But I'm saying that has what has always happened every time you have situations like this, right? Whenever sometimes countries want to invade another country, or they claim that they have a dictator and they want to create democracy. What they often do is they starve the people. They create all of these embargoes and they prevent goods and services from moving in and out of the country with the hope that these people, no matter how powerful their army they have, that the people will uprise and take them out of power. And I'm saying, if no matter how good a democracy is, if you don't feed the wolves, they will attack. And I am confident that enough people understand this and they will put things in place to prevent people from getting to that stage.
The stage that we want to avoid. Yes.
That is it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to make one bold prediction about AI and work, what would it be?
I think I'm pretty certain I've said some very bold predictions so far.
Bold. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've been
I've
making
said
bold predictions the whole
I've
time.
been I've been making, yeah, the bold one I'm making, and I'm saying it again because I don't hear enough about it. And if you have heard others saying it, you can tell me. Policies will be created. I'm going to say two because I know one that I love on the optimistic side of it. So policies will be created to prevent that long term displacement of jobs. There will be policies created to ensure that whether it's be through taxation or upskilling, um, or through universal basic income, because that's also a potential solution, right? Obviously from the
Right.
tax, then
Yeah.
I'm confident that some policy will be put in place and people won't be on the street. I can say that one boldly. You won't have a massive shift of people being on the street. If it happens in the short run, maybe. Because but I am confident policies will be put in place to prevent that from happening in the long run.
Yeah.
My bold prediction is that, and I think I don't know exactly what is being said now about the average lifespan of people being born today, but I'm confident that AI can add 20% onto that by the time those people get to whatever age is being projected. So if it is being said now that people born maybe 2 years ago, prior to the recent advancement in technology and chat GPT being launched and money being funneled into AI, if it was being said that people would live to 100 if they were born maybe 2, 3 years ago, I am projecting now that those people on average will be living to 120.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
projection, and that is coming from what I expect and I'm already seeing in terms of the development on the health side of AI.
Yes.
And we haven't spoken a lot about that optimistic side, Alex, but that is the side I'm a lot optimistic about, which is that there is value in life. The most important value we have is life. And we talk a lot about replacing jobs for non-essential services oftentimes, right? And I say that respectfully because the pandemic did somewhat define what those were based on how we treated certain jobs. Um, but when it comes to your life and your health, you'd consider that to be the ultimate protector, the ultimate value you have, right? So now think about it about the fact that there is a lot of untapped developments in medicine and in treatment. Oftentimes we're dying from things that the cure is there. We just haven't figured out how to cure it as yet and to develop the right drug for it. So for example, when DeepMind by Google, they they used their technology AlphaFold to develop a technology that can detect protein folding structure for 200 million proteins, and they did this within 90 days. This is something that, and I was watching an interview recently by Google CEO. He's saying to detect the folding structure of one protein is usually enough to get someone a PhD. And their technology was able to do 200 million protein folding, understanding how protein folded. That is the foundation of understanding biology, understanding the folding of the proteins. Now that that is understood, there is a lot of potential now to continue to use an AI to develop drugs based off of what you have learned about the current structure. So now cancer, there are so many cancers. Those will be a thing of the past. Not the detection, but living with it. Right now, chemotherapy is in many sense. I'm not a medical doctor, but I get the impression that chemotherapy sometimes is a hit and miss.
Yeah. It's
Oftentimes a
not
hit and
very
miss,
effective.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So I see in the not so far future a lot more people getting into that space to learn how to cure cancers, developing the drug, detecting what causes it. That is what I'm excited about. Extending human life,
Right. Right.
extending the quality of life that we live. And I'll just say, imagine now, for example, you have 100 students going to university, right? Of 100, maybe three were probably going to study medicine, 30 going to study marketing, 20 to study journalism or something like that. And then some other fields people looking to study. The shift may be now of the 100 that's going to university, maybe 40 or 50 going to study something related to medicine
Yeah.
and incorporating AI somewhere along the line as well.
right.
So, and then now we're upon graduating now, there were probably 50 jobs in marketing and journalism or some other field. Maybe now there's 4 or 5 jobs in that field. I'm not saying tomorrow, but I'm just saying into the future. But maybe now there are 50 openings for people in the medical field.
Right.
And then people willing to pay that money now to take care of themselves because
Yes.
they want to live to 120.
Yes.
So that's what I'm excited about.
I'm excited about that, but also I'm realistic that I feel like if you could extend the lifespan 20 years through an AI breakthrough, the billionaires are going to they're going to use it for themselves, charge a lot of money. I don't think that um, benefit is going to reach the poorest of us. It's going to be just for the wealthy. It's scary to think of a upper class who has all of the benefits of medical science and then a lower class that has no health care. It's scary because, right?
Yeah, and that's a possibility because we have seen it and it happens a lot, especially in the US healthcare system, where there's often times when there's a new breakthrough, that there's an inflated price associated with it. But I'm going to look at it from two other sides, Alex. I see what you're saying, and you're right that it tends to happen. But look at it now from the perspective, and this is justification that a lot of these pharmaceutical companies use. Oh, we have spent years and years and millions and billions developing these drugs, and we have a short window before our patent expire. So therefore, we have to maximize our return so it can pay for itself and to fund future drug development. That's the argument
Right.
you normally hear, right?
Yes.
Now, if you live in an environment now where you built a large language model, or in this case, a small language model tailored to your system, and your R&D now that usually takes 10 years to develop, you're now developing that drug in 6 months. You can't tell me your labor cost is the same, right? So now your
Right. That's true.
justification for charging significantly high markup, it's no longer there. So you now have to
Yes.
come with some other reasoning that the public is going to see through. The politicians, even though sometimes the problem is all the politicians are involved with the pharmaceutical, it's going to be more difficult, in my opinion, for them to continue this practice
Right. I agree.
because it's going to cost them less to produce.
Right. And um, if the US creates a drug that extends your life by 20 years, I think China is just going to disregard the patents and copy it and make it too because they want to live and they, right? So it, it's fascinating how all of this is going to interplay.
Yeah, yeah, and again, as I said, if there's a wonder drug that's being kept to a certain class of people, people will do something to try and prevent that, right? So I know the wealthy, unfortunately, they are usually the first to get access to some of these things. Um, but I don't believe that they'll be able to keep those drugs out of the hands of the public for an inordinate time period.
Right, right. I'm going to make one bold prediction before we're done. So
Mhm.
A ASI to me, when I think of ASI in 5 or 10 years, this um, mind that knows everything, has absolute power, can maybe even change parts of physics and just knows so much more than us compared to like us to an ant, right? Well, there's some people say there's a 50-50 chance that it might look at us as a threat and exterminate us. Or they could maybe a utopia, maybe make us this beautiful earth, heal us, and maybe mess with our biology so that we're not so violent or greedy. That would be a plus. But I feel like this whatever judgment that entity makes on us as humanity, it's the right judgment because we are a threat. We are a threat. We have 10,000 nuclear bombs on the planet. So we're definitely a threat. And so if AI with its much larger mind says, man, you guys are dangerous. I have to limit your population or wipe you out completely. I feel like it's the right decision because a lot of us feel the same way. Like, aren't we way too violent? Aren't we way too greedy? Are we dangerous? And I think we always say, well, yeah, a lot of us are. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, how I look at it, Alex, is that if you give AI the responsibility to determine our future to that level, what you're basically doing is asking it to play God. And I
Yeah.
don't believe we should have any human beings or any system get that level of responsibility. Because who is to determine who is ultimately good and who is ultimately bad? Yes, we have our moral compass, and yes, we know right from wrong in general, but it is a lot more nuanced to say a particular individual is evil and this particular person is great. So for example, I'm just going to use a name. What if our same system that we create says Putin is the good guy because of some justification that it is built upon, right? To say, you know what, he's looking at it that okay, he wants to his actions would probably reduce the population in the short run. So I want to go with him because ultimately the population size is a problem, right? What if that is it's rational to say Putin will destroy the world and not destroy the world, but get rid of a certain percentage of people. And therefore, if I support Putin as a human, he's leaning towards my ultimate goal, which is to reduce the population by a certain percentage, right? So then you see where the nuance comes into play because we might be saying no, this guy by some other metric is horrible based on some other things he has done or probably wants to do. So we don't want to have any system being able to make that judgment on any one of us because ultimately what makes this environment that our life beautiful is the fact that we have different perspectives, we have different opinion, we are all right about some things and we are all wrong about some things, and that's just human nature, right? It makes us diverse, it makes us interesting. If we then use an AI system who is supposed to know what is right and wrong, then I may look at it that if I throw something through the window, I'm just littering, but to hit, I'm destroying the planet and I should die for that. Right? So do we want a system that now changes or what we consider right or wrong to that extent? I don't believe I want that.
That's true. But when you see a piece of mold on your bread, you don't ask the individual cells, are you a good bacteria or a bad bacteria? You just throw the whole bread away. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I fear is that AI is going to say, I can't tell a good human from a bad human. I think they're all pretty much dangerous. And remember, their AI is not lacking knowledge. If he says Putin is good, there must be some evidence, real evidence, why he believes that. He's not hallucinating that Putin's good. He would, or it would make the most intelligent decision regarding our fate, not it won't be a decision that is based on feelings of loyalty to humans, but really on is this species dangerous or not? And what is the answer? I don't even know the answer because, yes, we are dangerous in certain situations, but we also should be. I would like to see AI change uh, the behavior of people to where we're less violent and less selfish. That would be the ultimate.
I agree with you as well. But as I said earlier, how I look at the future of AI is using it as a co-pilot, using it as a partner. Will it continue to increase its influence in our lives? Yes. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But to then leave it to the ultimate decision maker, I'm not seeing that in the near future. We allowing that. As I said, once the technology gets to that level, then policies will be put in place. Similar to, oh no, you have nuclear, but there are reasons why these different companies haven't just used their nuclear weapon just like that. So and these are human beings, so we can put guardrails in place, and I'm hoping and I'm expecting guardrails are put in place to prevent these things from happening. Because ultimately, as again, no one can make that type of judgment. We have laws, we have
Yeah.
regulation, and
Yeah.
if the AI system is helping us to follow those laws, then I understand it having an influence there, and I can see it being influential in terms of helping even judges determine what the right judgment is for certain type of crimes. But to then say to make it the judge, the jury, and the executioner, that would be irresponsible of us to allow our future to go into that position. And I'm saying, as much as we're building artificial super intelligence, I don't consider human dumb enough to allow that to happen without putting in sufficient guardrails in place.
Yeah.
Maybe in another lifetime, but not in my lifetime.
Right. Well, if ChatGPT can beat Sam Altman in chess, a game of strategy,
Mhm.
can he manipulate Sam Altman to loosen the guardrails, remove the guardrails? Is he not, is, is, is AI smart enough to uh, socially engineer a powerful man like Sam Altman to get what he wants?
Um, yes, that's possible, but why would it do that? That's
That's a good
that's
question.
that's
Why
almost
would he
saying
do that?
that's almost saying your child is manipulating you to do some bad things after you have raised the child. So if you have your child, sorry, I know I'm going into a very touchy area, but if my child grew up to want to manipulate me, I may not have been the best parent to that child, right?
That,
So if Sam built a system that wants to manipulate him, then Sam made a mistake at some point in time in not creating the right discipline in how they develop that child or children. So that's what I'm saying. That
right.
manipulation will come if you are a horrible parent, and we are responsible for parenting these systems.
Right. And that's what's scary because they trained these AI on internet, which has a lot of garbage, a lot of um, a lot of low, a lot of um, human drama and deception and selfishness. And so it's getting trained on it. You brought up a great example. You're a good parent, so your child will probably be raised good. But if if you're if you're feeding your child just internet trash, it's going to come out similar to garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah, but how these systems work is that many of these companies developing these LLMs, right? Because you're talking about these large language models, they have safety units and departments and people responsible for ensuring that these systems are deployed safely. So these systems, even though they came out imperfect, they came out imperfect because of something called agility in developing software, where you put out a very decent iteration, but then you know that it's not going to be your finished product, and you allow your users to determine what else you add to it. And in Sam's case, you also use it to raise billions to help develop the technology to the next level, which he has successfully done. You put out that and you beat your competitor to it and you have raised billions and billions. So what that money will then do is to build better systems, create a bigger safety unit, prevent certain type of disinformation or harmful content from being used in a way that can cause long-term damage to us as individuals. Again, I say this with some caveat, Alex, is that a knife in the wrong person's hand is either a weapon or a tool to help feed the many. So people and it's almost the same thing goes for books because people can learn from these books and they have learned from these books to manipulate us, and in many ways it has already been happening on social media where there's a high level of addiction towards social media platforms because of how they have trained us to use these systems, and to some extent they have been using AI under the quiet to do these things. So AI, as I said, is a positive or a negative depending on who is using it for what and how we perceive what we perceive as negative or positive based on how which side of the fence benefits us or benefits us financially or morally. So yes, the information is being fed, but it's not like every single thing that it takes from the internet it uses as its framework or to give you an answer on every single thing. And I've seen it takes some stuff, especially since it's connected now to the internet. It does give you some extremely weak information that it pulls from some unverifiable source. But we have a responsibility when it does that, Alex, where we need to check our source. And that's why, despite I'm saying academia might be going down in terms of number of intake, certain process that academia teaches in terms of validating where we get our information, we can't take away common sense and certain level of diligence that is needed, right? We need to consistently say, okay, I get this information. And it goes not just for AI related content, it goes for people sensationalizing information across the internet, right? Just to get clickbaits. So when people come and they send you anything and it might sound controversial, you have a responsibility to check the origination of the source and use multiple sources, just like what you're taught in academia, to validate your information. So we can't blame ChatGPT if it sends us something off the internet. It's up to us to now look and say, you know what, this doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yes, I agree. If someone is interested in reaching you for AI consulting, how can they reach you?
Sure. So they can reach me at michael@talkaiglobal.com or info@talkaiglobal.com, or they can go straight to my website, which is www.talkaiglobal.com, where there's a lot of information there and resources that you can use in your business. And if you want to have a chat, just reach out and I can point you in a direction that can help you as an individual or as an organization.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you, Michael, so much for this thoughtful conversation. You've given me a lot to think about, and it's not a subject that we can ignore because it's right here, it's happening now. And if we ignore it, we could be laid off or we could be out of a career. So it's just a lot to think about. And whatever the case, I'm hopeful that humans will survive and thrive and uh, make those guardrails that we were talking about. Yes.
Exactly. It was nice talking to you, Alex. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed the
Thank
conversation. So,
Awesome.
all the best.
All right. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Just search for Saginaw Spotlight. Until next time, Saginaw, keep shining.